that's a great way for you to practice, if you will, critical thinking
Yeah.
skills and hone your critical thinking skills when you're in a desert with a bike that's not supposed to be
No.
in a desert, um, and then having to focus and put your I mean, what's it's powerful though, Chris. The skills that you were learning from that desert trip, focus, learning about all your critical skills, going beyond the, your ability, pushing beyond and pushing further and pushing further, and still able to get to your desired outcome regardless of the challenges that showed up within your space as you were there, traveling and moving through
Hmm.
the desert. So here you are in South America, man, and you are now. I'm sure there's another set of challenges that are coming from there. You're in South America. Talk to me about your first day getting there, Chris. What was that like? Because again, you're moving through different cultures, extreme cultures, if you will, and belief systems, going from one to another. What happened when you got there, and what was your first impression, if you will, back in the day, as they say?
Well, I remember that day well. It was a bit scary because I was traveling with a German guy on another motorbike, and we'd arrived in Panama, and
Mhm.
the road stops in Panama. You can't fly across, you can't drive across the Darien Gap, they call it. It's a marshy, wild region. You have to fly or take a boat from Panama to
Yeah.
South America. So we managed to find a guy driving an old DC, right, or flying a DC-6 freight cargo plane, and he's a
Hmm.
motorcyclist. So we talked him into giving us a lift to Medellin in Colombia.
Yeah.
And Medellin in Colombia, we didn't realize that at the time was where Pablo Escobar was based in the 80s. So it was the middle of the sort of the cocaine land. So we ended up probably flying back in one of his planes, going back for more cargo. In an old cargo plane, so we were standing in the cockpit because there's no seats to sit on. So we landed
Yeah.
in Medellin, and there's guys running around with guns everywhere. And of course, they couldn't. We were two innocents abroad, landing in the middle of a cocaine war. All
Yeah.
we wanted to do
Yeah.
was get out of town as quick as we could. So it's
Yeah.
one of the most highly strung places I've ever been in. But I couldn't
Yeah.
get out of Colombia quick enough. Whereas apparently it's a lovely place to travel now.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
beautiful country.
So how long were you there? How long were you there once you realized what was happening
As
when you guys said, "Let's get out of here"? How
left as
long were
quick
you
as we
there?
could get out of town. We were out of town. So I think it took us about 3 days to get out of Colombia, but it was a scary. It was just you just know sometimes there's an atmosphere about it. You don't know what's going on, but you just don't want to be here, and you know that
Yeah. Yeah.
the people you're talking to don't trust you, and they don't want you to be there either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Wow, that is incredible, man.
so
You
certainly, I suppose
know. Um,
by that stage, I suppose we had a fairly good intuition about getting the vibe of various, learning from talking to people what they're feeling, and getting an intuition whether you're in a dangerous situation or not, or whether you can talk your way out of it, or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Crystal, do me a favor because I think people, I've always tried to tell people we need to be aware of that sixth sense, if you will. And I used to have a saying that I would tell my kids. I would tell them, if it feels wrong, it is wrong. And they have told me many times of situations where when my youngest son was telling me he and a bunch of his friends were on their way to a club, and his inside is just dancing, and all he could remember was me saying to him, if it feels wrong, it is wrong.
Yeah,
And he told his friends, he said, let's not go in there. Let's go to someplace else. And he said that as they turned around, they found out somewhere about another 30 minutes later that there was a serious um, like a drug war, just lots of
Hmm.
shooting, tons of people died that night, that very same
Wow.
club that they were going. So I always say to them, if it feels wrong, it is wrong. Talk to
Yeah.
people about that, Chris, because you are going from one hot zone to another, and you went into the belly of the beast in the 80s, the cocaine world. Everyone was all about the violence and stuff like that. Here you were thrust into this place. What was your sense talking to you about? Because I try to tell people it's important, Chris, to listen to that. It really is. And talk to us about the importance of that as you learn those lessons while you're out there in your adventures.
Well, I think, as you say, there's a sense of the right place to be or whatever. The trouble is, I think a lot of that sense comes from experience. And I think probably growing
Yeah.
up in Northern Ireland, in Belfast in the 70s,
Hmm.
gave me a dose of that experience because you could be talking to the right guy or the wrong guy in the bar. People were getting shot for
Yeah.
singing the wrong thing to the wrong person, just something silly, So we were quite aware of that from growing up and probably had a head start from most people. But
Yeah.
it's a wee bit like, I suppose, basic. Whenever we were growing up, there was no GPS, no Google Maps, so you had to, if you're cutting across, find a way across the city, you had to use a map and use your intuition and learn how to navigate.
Yes.
Whereas
Yeah.
kids these days now, everybody just uses Google Maps to go anywhere.
Yeah.
They don't have any experience of actually trying to find a way around. I think
Yeah.
most kids these days, if you tell them to try and find a way across the city without their phone, they'd be totally lost in seconds,
Be
because
lost. Yeah.
whereas I like to think still have the experience, you sort of roughly know which direction to take
Hmm.
geographically, and I think in life lessons as well, you learn which direction to take, um,
Yeah.
with right and wrong, with being in the right place, getting the wrong vibes, or somewhere you learn that that's something you should listen to your head. But if I think it's hard for
Yeah.
people if you haven't built up that experience to come to that decision, it's probably harder for them to have that sense. You're obviously older
Yeah.
and wiser
Yeah.
than your son. You were able to advise him that,
Yeah.
and it's good that he was able to listen to that and pay attention. But it must be hard for kids that
Yeah.
don't have that start in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I always made it a point, Chris, as I was learning, because I was on my personal journey and I was aware that I was on a journey, if you will. And so I was looking for um, things that made me grow up, and something that I knew that my sons needed, because I told them, I am simply on the road ahead of you, and
Yeah,
I'm going to learn a few things while I'm ahead of the road, that I can leave some little tidbits here and there. Hopefully, you guys will
yeah. You want to
will
pass on your experience,
grab it.
I guess.
Yeah, so that it would save them some pain from where I go. And I told them, I said, I didn't want to. My intention wasn't to save them from a situation, because I would tell them that everyone has their journey. But the information that I would tell them, I said, the information you can take from me, so that you don't have to stay within that situation 1 minute longer than you need to be, because I
Yeah,
think every situation is there to help you and I grow, and everyone on this planet. And if we are not aware of it, we can miss the whole lesson, if you will. So here you are, you guys are in the belly of the beast, and you got the heck out of there. So now, where was your next destination, and why did you pick that one, other than just let's get the hell out of here?
well, I suppose we were heading south. South America, so you could go down to Tierra del Fuego, down to the bottom, which is the sort of destination for a lot of people. But I was more interested in going to Mardi Gras in Brazil. But again, the destination wasn't that important. The fact that we were traveling on our own in
Hmm.
foreign lands, learning what's going on as day by day, was where the excitement was. And we were
Yeah.
20. I was 21 years old, and you're 21. You think you're invincible. You think nothing
Yeah.
bad can happen to you.
Yep.
You can do anything. Um,
Yeah.
so I ended up in Bolivia unfortunately got hepatitis there, got sick. I had to stay put for 2 or 3 weeks and eventually ran out of money. So
yeah,
I ran out of, got a little bit better, put the bike on a train and made my way to Buenos Aires and shipped home. So the journey ended up with a bit of a fizzle, really, because um, as I said, I was quite ill. The bike was wrecked, and I'd sort of become disillusioned with everything. It's mentally as well. It'd been a year and a half, quite hard work.
yeah,
I just needed to get back to reality. I think at that stage,
yeah,
and I suppose I could fast forward a little bit now because after I wrote the book about the journey 3 years ago, one of my friends said to me, "We never actually got to Australia. Why not have another go?" So I thought,
yeah,
well, I still have my old Moto Guzzi. I've got it fixed up and kept it in the garage. I said, why not
yeah,
take that and see if I can do it on that? So a year and a half ago, we set off to do it in stages because we've got a wife and family and work
yeah,
commitments
yeah,
here. So we do it in 2 weeks at a time. So we drove for 2 weeks and park up and go home for 3 months, 2 or 3 months, and then come back again. So
yeah,
um, we did stop at Athens and Israel and Dubai in Pakistan and India, Nepal,
yeah,
and eventually made it to Australia last month. So
yeah.
um, after leaving in 1979 to ride to Australia on a motorbike, I finally got there 2023, 40 odd years later. So
How did it feel, Chris? How did it feel when you hit the border and you're there and you're looking at it and your thoughts are dancing? What was that like?
it was a great feeling to accomplish what I'd set off to do, as I say, all that time back and finally succeed. Um, Although funny, when you're doing a journey like this, like that, it's always quite hard to get to destination because one way you're happy that you've survived and you've got there and you've accomplished the challenge that you set off to make. But in the other,
Yeah,
it's actually the end of the journey. It's the death of the journey.
yeah,
It's the destination. So it's the end of the fun, if you like. So it's I've always found it quite
yeah, yeah,
not disappointing, but sort of dis- disillusion. It's a bit disillusioned, but because it's never so much fun as you think it's going to be. And the main thing about it is that the trip is over, the journey's over, and okay, you can look forward to the next journey, but that trip
yeah,
is done. You know, so people like
yeah,
comparing a journey to life. I think by the time you get to your destination, is we're all going to the same destination. You got to
yeah,
enjoy the journey as you travel, rather than a lot of people
yeah,
you meet are always looking forward to what's happening next year or next week or next in the future. I think you got to
yeah,
live for today rather than plan ahead too much.
yeah. It's a great lesson for you for because most of us are programmed to plan, aren't we, Chris? They just program us to plan, and if we don't plan, something is wrong with you and all of these other things that they'll tell you. But
Yeah,
life has a way of disturbing your comfort. Life has a way of disturbing your comfort. Here you are, you're talking about, you got sick. You didn't expect that to come into your space um, and to do what it did, but things happen, life happens, and
yeah.
sometimes we just have to reroute. And like you said, you became disillusioned with the trip. Talk to me as to the things that you were putting in the book, Chris. What were some of those um, things that what were you putting in your book when you were sick? What was some of those conversations you were having with yourself when you were there at in that state, if you will, a
Well,
vulnerable state?
to be to be honest, when I was in that state, I didn't put anything in the book because when you're um, in trouble like that, you don't think about the future at all. That's when you're thinking about the present because you're thinking,
Yeah,
I'm sick, I'm running out of money, I'm in the middle of South America, nobody knows me here. I can't just jump on a
yeah,
plane and fly home because there's no money. So you're
yeah,
trying to work out what you're going to do for the day to day to survive. Whereas you're writing a journal, you're writing that for tomorrow. You're writing that because you want to read it in the future. But it's
hmm
at times it's maybe like photographs. Whenever something exciting happened. I never had the camera to take a picture of it because I was always too
Yeah.
busy trying to survive or trying to get out of trouble to say stop. If
Yeah.
somebody's
Yeah.
going to hit you, you don't say stop. Wait, I take your picture. You just run like hell, you know. So
Yeah.
I'd love to say I had some magical thoughts when I was lying in my bed sick, but really all I was thinking is, God, what's wrong with me apart from anything else? Because I didn't have any money to go to the doctor even. So I was sort of
Yeah.
self-diagnosing what was wrong with me and trying to work out
Hmm.
how I was going to get enough energy to travel on to get somewhere that I could get back to civilization to get some money sent
Some
over.
answers. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I mean, at that stage in the game, I did realize, I think that I was starting off on a journey trying to find out effectively what the coin phrase, the meaning of life was all about.
Yeah.
And at that stage, I had realized, well, this is what life is all about. It's about living. It's just about surviving and doing what you can
Yeah. Yeah.
to get through. Um, so,
That's a good lesson. I mean, it's a powerful life, not a lesson. It's a powerful life, Chris, that you had. I always, say to people sometimes there's the theory, like in school, there's a theory, and then there's the lab. And most people study the theory, he has never been into the lab.
yeah,
And then there are those that are out there that haven't studied the theory, but they're out there in the lab practicing and living the theory. And those guys, I think, um, carry a much more palatable, powerful story than those that are just reading the books and the theories. They haven't really lived, if you will, like you did by getting out there and practicing it and gaining the wisdom. So here you are, you got into the plane, you're back home, and you're mending. Uh, what were you thinking about when you were there mending, and how were you making the adjustment, if you will? There's this young man, been on the road for many years, and now he is going to be stable because of number one, his condition, but then you're looking also at your finances and stuff like that. What was your conversation with yourself at that moment around that time, Chris?
well, I guess I probably had a bit of a surge of reality hit me. I realized, so this is life as we know it, and I've got to get into the
Yeah.
way of. There's no point fighting against it anymore. To go with the flow, if you like. So I did start got a job, worked in a
Yeah.
family business, and started developing that, and
Yeah.
realized that that's whatever you do, you could put your full energies into. And was able to develop into quite a big property business and diversify into fitness and mobile apps and do
Hmm.
different things. Brought a family up and had a couple of beautiful girls and got on with day to day life and put my heart and soul into that. I suppose. Realized that's what I would have to do. That's what life is. Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting. It was interesting as I could have it when I went away on the bike finally last year to finally get to Australia. But now 63, 64. At
Yeah.
the end of my working life. Um, so it's so semi-retired. It's a complete opposite end of the scale from when I was 21 traveling. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was interesting to reflect back on what's happened in the last 40 years. And I actually lucky enough to meet a couple of guys that I met 40 years ago that I haven't seen since. And it's quite strange
Yeah.
being able to meet somebody that they were 21 as well, now in their 60s, and talking about, well, what happened in between, where did it all go? And as you say, no matter how well we planned things and worked hard and whatever,
Yeah.
life got in the way, and things usually for people changed, didn't actually go the way
Yeah.
they expected. There's been ups and
Yeah.
downs and roundabouts.
Yeah. But you
Uh,
gained, I think you gained a couple of things out there while you're on the road that would even help you greatly in your quote unquote regular life, if you will. Um, you have gained critical thinking skills. that stuff, the critical thinking skills, is the ability to adjust as situations come from all over at all times that you were dealing with in the in your journey as a young man. You're looking outside, as they say, they call those stuff outside of the box kind of
Mm,
thinking, and that's a powerful um, um, if a for lack of a better word, a companion to have with you, Chris, while you're embarking on the family business, if you will. To have that along with you is a powerful companion, because now when you look at quote unquote the family business, you're seeing it from all kinds of different angles that someone,
yeah,
had you not gone in that journey, would have never looked at it at all. So you brought a tremendous amount of power as you have that friend with you, that constant companion of your critical thinking skills, and you're able to uh,
yeah,
do wonders with the business.
yeah. And I think in the West we're brought up and taught and driven into this that we should do what we're told and follow the rules and follow there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things, and you should do it the right way,
Yeah.
the road that everybody else goes down. Whereas I think what it taught
Hmm.
me was that you don't have to do that. You can actually go the other road and have
Yeah.
a really incredible time without the masses following the masses. So I like to think I've been able to use
Yes.
that in a business and personal life and do things the
Yeah.
wrong way, which is more often than not the wrong way for a good reason. That it's going to get you into trouble or cost more or be more difficult, whatever. But it's if you survive it, you get more out of the challenge than you would have just doing it
Yeah.
the normal route. So I've tried to do
Yeah.
that. Um, I haven't probably even tried to do it, but I think just from start I've ended up doing it quite often out of choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just our bloody mindedness, just ended up doing it my own way anyway. Um,
Yeah.
and very often ended up with got into a terrible mess because of it, but at least I've enjoyed it, finding it out myself.
Yeah. Well, that's where the critical thinking skills comes into play. So in the beginning, Chris, you had told me that a friend of yours came and look at your notes, if you will, and say, this is a good book. Um, Talk to me about that conversation. How did it come about? Did you just you guys were chatting, a couple of buddies talking, and you pulled out your life story and you handed it to him, and he took a you know, glance at it and says, "Yeah, this is a good book," and you just tossed it away. Talk to me a little about that.
Back 40 years ago, you mean, or
Yeah, yeah.
whenever?
40 years ago.
Well, I suppose he'd done everything the right way. He'd been financed, he had a new motorbike, he'd the Sunday Times newspaper behind him. He'd written a couple of books, so but he was 45 years
Yeah,
old, so he's middle aged and quite well experienced in life. And his book read well. It's been a trend. People are still buying it 40 years later. It's in the motorcycle book world. Um, so it was a sort of, what did you say? A great read, great book. But everybody enjoyed it. But what I didn't realize that for a 45-year-old man to be in the situation that I was in on the same road at 21, you're going through a completely different thought process, completely different lifestyle
yeah,
change as well. Because he was living in hotels, I was camping at the side of the road. So even though we were going down the same
yeah,
road, we were finding it was having a completely separate, different effect on us. So
yeah, yeah.
the book I wrote was completely different to his book.
Hmm.
Um, Different style, different content, different emphasis on different. Two people can look at a trade and see two different things, or look at a situation and see two different things out of the same situation. So
Yeah,
um, I didn't realize that at the time, but now with more experience, I've been able to do that. And
yeah,
as I say, it was fascinating to be able to
yeah,
write at the age of 60 odd, to write a book as if I was in my 20s. And thinking I was a
yeah.
20-year-old and read my notes of when I was 20 and sort of see what an idiot I was.
Yeah. When you picked it up back, Chris, after 40 years, that's a long time to let it sit, if you will. Um, After 40 years, what made you pick it up? What made you pick it up, Chris?
Well, a number of things. It's always been on my mind. We'd moved house. We'd been living in Dubai for a while. And we just moved back, so I found all the notes and um, heard somebody else was doing another trip on a similar motorbike. So I thought I'm just going to sit down and write this now. Um,
Hmm.
and I said I never was never very academic at school. Never very good at. But if it hadn't been for spell checker, I don't think I could ever have finished it. You know, it would complete. So I was able to put it together. I was, but it tremendous change has changed my life in a lot of ways because it's got me back into.
Yeah,
I've been out of motorcycling for years. I hadn't really thought about trips, the trip much. But since then, I've been able to meet up with old people that I knew for the past, people who I used to go to school with. Um, I've been able to connect with a lot of old friends, and some of
yeah,
the reviews have been quite touching that people have read the book.
yeah,
And one guy wrote to me, said his son was in hospital with a serious back injury. He'd had a dozen operations. He was under a lot of pain, and he used to read my book to him, and he felt it
wow,
helped him because when he saw the challenges that I faced, how I was able to get over them, it was able to give his
yeah,
son some inspiration to face his challenges, even though they were a completely different type of challenge. You know, he was under pain and medical treatments. It was completely different from what I was going through, but uh, to get word back that what you've written has helped somebody through a situation like that is
yeah.
quite awesome. You know.
That is powerful, Chris. That is just a powerful story. Guys that are listening to us, I'm looking at your thing on here. So I was trying to. Chris's story and his journey is a powerful journey, and you guys know how I feel about an author because I remember when I published mine too, Chris. It was self publishing. I know about all the challenges that goes with that. And so I feel, and I've been telling my people for many years now, that when you buy the book of an author, you're actually having a one-on-one conversation with them. You're in
Yeah.
your comfort zone, if you will.
Yeah.
And because you're there, the information that is housed on those pages has the ability to leap from the pages and drop inside of you. And they change you. I remember when I was about to, wanted to deal, one of the demons, if you will, that I had to deal with, Chris, was anger. And I remember hunting for books and tools to help me with this thing. And I remember walking into, actually, I was driving in Florida somewhere, and I drove into a monastery because I wanted to check it out. And there was a book right there about anger. So I walked in, I bought it. And when I got home, Chris, I sat down, opened the book to start reading. I think I read the first chapter, and there's a line that came out of that book that says, "How many hours and that we and days and years that we've caused pain because of not being able to control this emotion." That thing jumped from that page and right inside of me. I never read the book, Chris. I read up to that point because what I needed was right there.
Yeah.
And it came in, it changed my life forever. And so I
Mm-hmm.
always tell people, when you buy a book from an author, you're having a one on one conversation. You're able to receive an exchange. And those that are listening to us, buy Chris's book. There wisdom that housed in there that he hasn't talk about at all because um, this format doesn't allow to go in depth. But that book will show you how the ability of critical thinking, how it is a great, powerful friend that you can utilize in your life that will help you to get out of situation. He was just telling this powerful story about his friend reading a book to his son that was injured, and the inspiration that the son got from Chris's critical thinking within his journey, and that son was able to adjust his thinking as well from Chris's story. And so I challenge you guys, buy it for your friends. I know you guys that have biker friends, buy it for those, and those that are not biker friends, you buy it and give it to them because it will change their life. Um, Chris, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment, man. This has been a really good one. I'm so honored to have you here because you started the journey way before I even thought about doing anything, and I'm not as adventurous like you with the bike. I'm the lazy one. I catch planes from here to there. And so I tip
You're
my
missing
hat
all the
off to
fun.
you, man, for the courage yeah, the business of fun, the courage that it took for a young 21-year-old young man to do. That is courageous stuff, Chris, what you did, man.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir,
Uh,
for coming.
it's been a pleasure being here. Sorry, we're breaking up a bit, but it's been a pleasure being here talking to you.